Welcome to this week's meeting of the Silicon Valley E-Club meeting. The goals of our club are in innovation, technology, and education. And one of the concepts which is part of innovation and entrepreneurship is creativity. And we have a special meeting today on the creativity in art with our special guest, Marissa. Now, Marissa is 19 years old. She has finished her bachelor's degree earlier this year, and she graduated from high school when she was 16. And I'm not going to comment on the quality of her work at this point of time, but I think that will speak for itself. And go ahead, Marissa, take it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to speak with you today. As he said, my name is Marissa Renee. I run the Art of Marissa Renee, and I'm a portrait artist. I draw people and animals in watercolor, charcoal, pastel, oil pastel, and graphite. And I've been an artist for 3 years now, ever since I was 17 years old. But besides being an artist, I am one of 9 children. My family and I travel full-time as music missionaries, and I'm a background vocalist for that music mission. And we are full-time on the road in this trailer that you can see here in this picture. We all live in that, all 11 of us. And we have been to 49 states on that music mission, and we meet thousands of incredible people along the way. And I really love to meet those people and hear about their stories. And I also love to capture those people as I see them and hear their stories in my artwork. And I'm going to show you a picture I drew of one lady I met a little later on in the presentation. I have been drawing ever since I was a wee little girl. You can see a picture of me when I was 8 years old here, winning 2nd place Lat champion for that really horrible picture of a bunny that you see there in the picture. So I've always loved to draw, but I have absolutely no formal art training. The only training I have comes from my mother, from art books, and from YouTube videos. Growing up, I was homeschooled, so my mother taught every subject from science and math all the way to art. So every Friday, we would have an art class where she would teach us from a book everything about shading, perspective, proportions, and they were just the basics, but they really helped me when I was little. But my mom doesn't really know too much about art personally. I'm going to show you an example of her work. And my mom and I had a good laugh over these. And I'm not being mean in showing you. She said, show them your artwork so that they know that you are self-taught, not taught by your mother. So that's her work. And she decided very early on in my life that I needed a little extra guidance for my artwork. So she bought me these art books, Faces by Walter Foster and Lifelike Drawing in Colored Pencil by Lee Hammond. And Faces by Walter Foster really taught me all about the facial features of the human face, drawing people in different viewpoints, getting the form right, understanding the proportions of the face. So these really got me through most of my childhood as far as what I needed to teach myself art. And Lee Hammond taught me all about layering colors properly, putting colors into a composition. And after a while, I realized that I needed a little more guidance for this. I needed to learn some more about techniques. So what I did was I went to YouTube. And YouTube is such a great resource. I look up time-lapse videos a lot. Some of my favorite time-lapse videos that I watch are the Portrait Art and Bogra Art Studios. The Portrait Art does 3-minute time-lapse videos of the process of drawing from the beginning all the way to the end. And it really helps me understand how the process of drawing works, how to layer my charcoals, how to blend my charcoals. And then another time-lapse video studio that I like is Bogra Art Studios. And I have a little example of her work here. And what she does is she's a pastel artist, and these time-lapse videos show how she layers the art, the pastels, how she blends the pastels, and how she does backgrounds and highlights and shadows. And just by watching these videos, I'm able to understand how to work with the different mediums and how pastels work. And anytime I want to find a new technique, or I need to understand a little more about a certain medium, I just go on YouTube. It's such a great resource for people like me who need to be self-taught. And it was very helpful to me, but I'd say the most helpful thing that I have learned from is observation. So growing up, my mother always told me, make eye contact with everyone. Try to see what color people's eyes are. So I'm always looking at eyes. I got into that habit. And always looking at eyes has really helped me learn how to draw eyes by seeing how they change with different emotions, seeing how they fit in the faces of different people. It's all really helped me to draw eyes better. Another observation that has helped me is just looking at the artwork of other people. So I can look at a piece now and critique it and say, I would do this a little bit differently, or I can identify different techniques that they use and then apply those to my own artwork. And it really helps me to improve. But the most important thing in observation that has taught me how to draw is learning how to shut off my brain and turn on my eyes. And this is a really interesting thing about the brain, because when you're looking at something, the brain kind of tells you what that thing is supposed to look like. The eyes shut off and the brain fills in the missing pieces. But that kind of prevents you from seeing things as they really are. An example of this is one time when I was little, I was painting a gray pipe, and my brain was telling me, the pipe is gray, just paint the pipe gray. This is straightforward. But I shut off my brain for a minute and I turned on my eyes, and my eyes saw something else. They saw that the pipe had green undertones, and my brain didn't notice that. But so I listened to my eyes, and instead of painting gray, I started off by painting the pipe green. And after that, I painted a layer of gray on top so that you could still see the green coming through, but the pipe was essentially gray. So it ended up being a lot more realistic than it would have been if I had just listened to my brain and shut off my eyes, as we're usually accustomed to doing. So that's pretty much my entire art education. A lot of people assumed that I would go to arts college after this, just because that's kind of the logical next step for an artist. But they're surprised when I tell people that I graduated in June with a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship. So I didn't go to art school for some very simple reasons. I had advice from some mentors who said, if you go to art school, the professors are going to try to teach you how to do art in the professor's style. It's very hard to keep your own style and go to art school. And I wanted to keep my style, so I didn't really want to have anything to do with that. Another thing is that when you go to art school, they're going to teach you a broad scope of skills. And I wanted to focus on my craft instead of learning things like pottery or sculpture or graphic design or digital art. So I really wanted to focus on my craft and kind of avoid getting distracted by those different things. And finally, some students that I've talked to who have gone to art school have lamented to me that they leave art school not knowing what to do with these new skills that they have. They have all these great skills and they don't know how to market themselves. So they just join the Starving Artist Club down the street and get a real job, which is not what I wanted to do. I want to be able to come away from college knowing how to run a business so that I can actually make a living off of my artwork. So I went to business school instead of art school, and I did it entirely online. I started with a program called Lumerit Education. Lumerit Education is a Christian program that guides students through the process of completing their bachelor's degrees with no debt. And it does that through online coaching, degree planning, and testing for credit. My coach was named Lydia, and she kind of helped me, walk me through this plan. And this is an example of the degree plan that they gave me. It's a kind of step-by-step process of getting all the credits that I need for my artwork. And then my coach helped me test for credit. And when I say test for credit, what I mean is CLEP or DSST. CLEP or DSST are self-study programs in which you buy the textbook, you study the textbook on your own, and then when you're ready, you schedule a test at a university, and most universities accept this kind of test now. And then if you pass the test, they give you the credits. And I've gotten as much as 6 credits for one exam, so this is really helpful. And the great thing about CLEP and DSST is that they save time. I completed my degree in 2.5 years versus the traditional 4 to 5 years for a bachelor's degree. And the CLEP and DSST are also super affordable. They only cost about $80 per exam compared to the average $600 of insanity that it costs now to go to a class and get the credit hours that way. So I was able to test out of 90 credits this way, and all of those credits I applied to Liberty University online. And you can see a picture of my university there in the lower left-hand corner. Apparently that's what it looks like. I've never actually been there because I did my degree entirely online. And the great thing about Liberty University is it's super flexible. I was able to continue traveling and do college at the same time. It's also professor-led, so I got the expertise from the professors. And it also gave me an opportunity to interact with other students through the online student forums. And we were able to encourage each other and work together on group projects and just have a great student community. And you can see a picture there in the upper left-hand corner of my commencement. I watched my commencement long distance on my computer, and I painted at the same time, so I was putting my skills to use. And I graduated last June at the age of 19 with only $5,500 in student loans and the skills that I needed to run my business. I came away knowing how to build a website. I built the artofmarissarenee.com. I learned how to market myself, and I learned how to do the business planning tasks that are necessary to do what I love. And now I would like to share with you what I love to do. This is my artwork. This is a piece of Mr. Rogers called Won't You Be My Neighbor. Some interesting facts about this piece is you can see the heavy shadows on this side of his face. This eye here is a little bit obscured by the shadows. So an interesting thing I learned about artwork, when you are looking at a model or a reference photo, if you can't see something in the photo that you know is supposed to be there, like this eye, you don't draw it. If you leave that obscured, like it was in the reference photo I used, your brain is going to fill in what your eyes don't see. But if you paint or draw in there what you think is supposed to be there, it's going to look unnatural. By leaving it obscured, it looks natural and actually very artistic. Another interesting thing I did on this piece was I used acetone antiquing. This is a cool technique that gives you these kind of raindrop effects around the borders. I did that using acetone in a spray bottle. So I just sprayed the borders of the charcoal, and it gave me this really cool effect once it dried. So that was super cool. This next piece was a commission, and the interesting thing about this one is the background. So whenever you're painting a background on a piece, you really want it to enhance the subject without distracting from it. So I opted for a simple gray watercolor wash on this piece. So I just laid my gray wash down, and then I used a salt technique on top of that, and I sprinkled just regular table salt on here. And then once it dried, I brushed the salt off, and it left me with this really cool kind of smoky look. And it kind of gives you the smoky vibe you'd expect at a racetrack. So it really enhances the subject without distracting from it. And that's really important with backgrounds. This next piece is called Kitten in the Light. An interesting thing about this one is that it was drawn in the negative. So normally when you draw with black on white paper. In this case, I used black paper and drew on it with a white charcoal pencil. So it really flipped my brain around. So instead of drawing shadows, I was drawing highlights. So I really had to turn on my eyes and shut off my brain for this piece. Interestingly, this one was actually drawn in the van. That's a little tricky because the bumps in the road kind of mess with my pencil a little bit, and I ended up with a lot of curly hairs here, which is actually good. It looks more realistic that way. And the composition on this one is also very interesting. You can see it's kind of a triangular composition. It ascends on this side of the kitten and on this side of the kitten, and both sides meet at the focal point of the picture. I also used spotlight lighting, so you can see the light is brightest right here on the kitten's face. And that composition and lighting serve to draw the viewer's eyes into the main focal point of the piece. And anytime you have a composition and lighting, you want the composition and lighting to work together to draw the viewer's eyes to the main focal point of the picture. And that's the whole purpose of composition and lighting. This next piece was another commission that I did for the Furry Place in My Heart. This was a watercolor, and some interesting facts about this one is you see these splatters in the background here. Those were achieved using a toothbrush. So I took my toothbrush and I dipped it in paint, and this is not the toothbrush that I use on my teeth, just so you know, this is a spare. And then I flicked the bristles of that toothbrush with my thumb, and I got these cool splatters in the background here. And anytime you see this kind of splatter look in a watercolor painting, you'll often see it on wood, on houses, on the walls, in the sky for snow, or anywhere that's kind of antique looking. It's usually achieved with a splatter technique from a paintbrush. So that's kind of an interesting thing to know. Next time you visit your gallery, you can look for toothbrush splatters. Another thing I did on this piece was I used masking fluid. So if you see these whiskers here on the dog's face and the hairs down here, those were just left as plain white paper. Anytime you want something in watercolor to be white, instead of painting white watercolor on there, you just leave the paper blank. And that's a little tricky to do with small details like these whiskers. So I took a little masking fluid and I put it on a toothpick and I brushed that along the whiskers. Then I painted over that with watercolor paints. And then when everything dried, I rubbed away the masking fluid with an eraser, and I was left with these nice little white details here. So that was a lot of fun to paint. This next piece is White Mountain Apache, and this is a lady that I met while doing mission work on an Apache Indian reservation in Arizona. And I really enjoyed meeting her. Her grandson was running the recovery center down there, and he was helping people overcome their addictions to drugs and alcohol by telling them the good news of the salvation of Jesus Christ. So that was really cool. And seeing her there supporting him was just great. She had this strength and hope about her that I really wanted to capture. And besides that, I just love her face. So I painted this, and I really hope I captured her the way I saw her. Some interesting techniques I used with this one is you can see the strong light on this side of her face. That was left just blank to achieve the white. As I said before, this is a watercolor, so you leave the page blank to get that white. And that strong light kind of brings added drama to the face, gives the face a little bit more dimension, and it really draws the viewer's eyes over there. So another thing I used with this piece was I exaggerated the colors a little bit. You can see on this side of her face is purple and her hair is blue. On this side, her face is green, orange, yellow, brown, and then her hair is a little bit green too as well. So it doesn't look striking. I mean, it looks striking, but it doesn't look unnatural. And that is because our faces aren't just different shades of brown. When you pick apart the colors in the human face, you will see green, blue, purple, yellow, orange, all these different colors, and they come together to make a really cool natural skin color. And that's a really neat thing about being an artist. I can look at faces and pick out all these different colors that come together to make something really beautiful. So that was a lot of fun to paint that. A couple more quick examples of my work. These are some charcoal drawings I did. This first one is the Lion of Judah, and then that guy doesn't have a name, so if you want to suggest anything, I'm always open. And this one took a little while because of all those little hairs I had to draw in there. It's very detailed, but I enjoy that kind of detailed work, so it was fun. This next one is an oil pastel painting called Simple Pleasures. I really enjoyed painting her. Oil pastels are really fun to blend together, so that was a great piece to draw. And this next one is a watercolor called After the War. I tried to capture what this man must be feeling after coming home from a war. So I left some really loose grays in here. Kind of looks a little bit messy on his face because I wanted to bring out the drama of his emotions in this piece. And I really hope I achieved that with this. This next one is a watercolor of a cowboy. Interestingly, I used watercolor pencils on his face because I wanted it to be nice and tight there and not too messy like watercolors tend to be. And then I used regular watercolor paints around his face so that the rest of it had a little bit looser effect. And his face was nice and tight, so you were really drawn into his face and his eyes especially. And then this last one is a charcoal drawing of my sister Emily. You can see I used some of the acetone in this piece, so the background is a little bit antiqued, and it brings a nice texture into the background that contrasts with how smooth her face is. I really wanted her to jump out of this piece, so by making the background textured and leaving her face smooth, she really kind of pops out of it. And this is just a small sample of my work. I share a lot more of my work on the artofmarissarenee.com. I also share my work on my Facebook page and my Instagram account, so if you want to check those out, those are available. And I really love sharing what I do with other people. And I love to share the way I see the world. So thank you so much for listening and for this opportunity to speak with you. I guess we're going to take some questions now. Ooh, applause. Crowd goes wild.
I've got a question. Do you work from a photograph or do you work from memory?
Oh, my memory
With your
is very
subjects?
good.
What do they
I normally work from a photograph. Every now and then I have a model, but I'm really slow, so my models kind of get annoyed with me after a while. So yeah, I usually work from a photograph. I have tried doing it from memory before, and that doesn't always end well.
Cecilia?
So which of those resources do you think was the most helpful in getting you to the point where, I mean, these drawings or sketches or whatever are just fabulous?
Oh, thank you. I think my biggest resource that helped me the most was the book by Walter Foster, Faces. I lived by that book for most of my childhood, and that really got me loving art more than I thought I would.
I ask because I'm a frustrated artist, meaning I never graduated from stick figures, and I keep saying that in my retirement, which is coming in a year,
yeah,
I'm going to spend some time teaching myself how to draw and sketch. So
awesome. Well, that book by Walter Foster is definitely high on my list of recommendations.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions, Cecilia or Shags?
Well,
Go ahead, Cecilia.
So when you are doing pencil drawings, for example, because I'm sure you do a certain amount of that to set your portraits up for the pastels. So what is your technique for doing those? Or do you just go launch right into the pastels and somehow create these wonderful things?
I usually start with a basic mechanical pencil on the paper to get my basic shapes in there. And I try to get pretty detailed so that my end piece is not all wonky. And it's hard to to just go right into pastels because you can't really erase them.
Right.
So I do start with a pencil, just regular pencil, and sometimes I use a grid on my pieces to kind of give myself more of a guide to where everything is, and that way my pieces also go a little bit faster. Because
Right.
especially when I'm doing commissions, I need to be able to get the first sketch out there pretty quickly.
Commissions, wow. I'm impressed.
Oh, thank you.
How long does it take you to do a portrait?
Oh boy, it really depends on the subject. I've had some that take me a couple hours. That one piece that I had up there, it was a brown picture of a girl with really curly hair. That took me about 5 hours. I know I was watching musicals during it, so I think I was done by the end of the second musical. So it doesn't take me very long for some of them, but things like that lion, the Lion of Judah that I showed you, that took, I was working on that for a year, on and off, but probably about a week or two altogether on that one.
Okay.
Actually working.
Have you ever taken any studies on the use of light on your portraits?
Not really. I probably should. I do plan on taking an art class eventually. But just observing how light hits things has really been my biggest guide on drawing. So,
Are you familiar with the concept of Rembrandt's shadow?
I think so. You can explain it to me a little more if you want, 'cause I'm not entirely sure.
What it is, and it can happen on either side of the nose, and it depends on how the light hits, and such that you would get a little square right under the eye and around the nose, and that's usually
sure.
is something that Rembrandt made famous, and is called Rembrandt shadow.
Okay.
And in doing photography, which is, something, there's one of the things that I've picked up on doing courses, online, of course, dealing with the uses of light. And it was one of the things that they illustrated is how you set up your light so that you can create that shadow.
Okay.
And if you look in a lot of Rembrandt's pictures, he has his artwork, he has mastered that technique of light such that it shows up that particular feature. And so when you look at his paintings, you'll pick that up. What are your plans next to do in terms of developing your artwork in terms of your skill set?
Oh, in terms of my skill set, well, I'm gonna first of all just keep going as I'm going. Most of the people I've talked to, the advice I get is just keep practicing. So I'm gonna keep doing that. And I also plan on taking some focused art courses. My grandmother lives in Sturgeon Bay, so there are plenty of art places around here that offer classes. So I'm hoping to take a few of those just to kind of help my skills keep going. But one of the biggest things for art is there's a story of a man up here who was a famous painter. I don't remember his name, but he got advice from his mentor of how to become a great artist, and his mentor said, paint 1,000 paintings. So that's what I plan to do, paint 1,000 paintings.
Mm-hmm. When you said about what the advice that you got about going to art school, reminded me of attending a series of lectures by a chap by the name of Harry Philo, who was known in the United States as the King of Torts, and which is a series of law. And the first thing he did in his first lecture says that the first thing I have to destroy within you is the burden that you have from a law school education.
Oh.
And in the series of lectures that I received from him, that was very true, because what he did at that over the series of lectures is totally wipe away the courses that I had taken in torts law. And you can get into very quickly, by attending one lecture or one series of classes in particular, you lose your own style, and you get enmeshed with the theory or the outlook that the instructor has. And that can be very, very disadvantage to you, because you miss that which is important.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Are there any other questions, Cecilia or Shag?
Not from me, other than to say, I've heard it said that if you want to become a great photographer, take 1,000 pictures.
I've heard that one as well.
Now, I've taken thousands of pictures and I still don't think I'm a very good photographer, but
Yeah, me
whatever.
neither.
Well, my brother-in-law, who's a carpenter, a finishing carpenter, always says the story is that when he was doing his apprenticeship, he had to cut dovetails by hand. And after doing about 800 of them, finally a light come on, and he knew how to do it. And it's the same principle of practice over time, which you develop your skills. And particularly for in art or photography or whatever, is developing the ability to see, which you mentioned before, to be observant about things around you. And that's extremely important.
Yes, it is.
Now, I would ask all of our members and the guests on the presentation and who watch this presentation, this program, to at the end to fill out the comment section at the bottom. And also don't forget to register your attendance. And if you are a guest watching this program, by filling in your correct email address, you will receive from the club a makeup card to take to your club secretary. Now, Melissa, I'm going to ask you to leave us with the last words, please.
My final words of wisdom.
Yes, please.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you again so much for this opportunity to speak with you. I wasn't expecting this at all. And it was great speaking with you, wonderful people, and getting to know all of you. And Merry Christmas. This is going to be a great Christmas season.
And as this program is going to go during the our Christmas time, on behalf of all of us, I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.